And back to one of our top stories. Relations between South Africa and Israel remain strained after a tit-for-tat expulsions of diplomats from both countries. Israel retaliated after South Africa declared Israel's Ashad affair persona non grata. To discuss this further, I'm joined by Professor John Stremlau, who's an international relations expert from Wits University. Professor Stremlau, very good evening to you. I'm sure, of course, we've had a lot of reaction to these news from yesterday already. Israel also reacting pretty quickly as well. But I really want to ask you about the U.S.'s possible reaction. As of a few hours ago, it seemed that the U.S. president hadn't, or the White House hadn't responded yet. How do you think it's going to affect the relations between South Africa and the United States even further?
Well, it's going to be a background issue. This is a symbolic escalation between Israel and South Africa, but South Africa is reinforcing its principled stand on its legal posture on this issue, and I think that the DIRCO has responded very principled and positive in both cases of the expulsion and the original expulsion of the charge here and Israeli charge, and also the Bibi Netanyahu's regime has really been responsive, as Trump would be, to a principled legalist position. And so I recall that I was friendly with Ibrahim Rasool, who, when he came to the U.S. as ambassador initially under Obama, he came down to the Carter Center where I was working at the time, and he was informed about the U.S. and its politics. And I thought that the expulsion of his second term as ambassador under Donald Trump was an excuse. It was an excuse to escalate the hostility between South Africa and the U.S., but the South Africans were not to blame at any time in this course of the U.S.-South African relationship. This is Donald Trump.
And speaking about the U.S.-South Africa relations as well, I mean, even though this is between South Africa and Israel, we do know that a lot of the time, Israel and the U.S. being close aides and having a very close relationship between those heads of state as well, that they do come to the backing of Israel. So when Israel reacted by then also expelling Mr. Shaun Beineveld from their embassy there, but also DIRCO clarifying that Mr. Beineveld actually was a representative from South Africa to Palestine and not to Israel.
Yes, and the Israelis are ethnic nationalists, religious nationalists, and they want to form one unitary state with the expulsion of the Palestinians. And I was in the Bush 1 administration under policy planning director Dennis Ross, who was a Jewish by birth and raising, but nevertheless wanted a two-state solution because he recognized that the Palestinians have a right to the claim to that land as Israel does, as the Jews do. And I was hoping that they would work out a South African type solution, a compromise and political coexistence, but it was not to be. And the U.S. has strongly backed Israel throughout, and just as it backed the apartheid regime until the end of the Cold War and the changes down here. And finally, they, but as former, as DERCO Minister Lamola commented about in his response to the Secretary of State, Nelson Mandela was only taken off the terrorist list in 2008, for heaven's sakes. So the U.S. has not got a history of good relations with South Africa, and I hope that it improves, but it's got to get rid of Donald Trump. That's a political decision by the voters of the United States.
Prof, I don't know if you had time to listen to the interview that we had here on the channel a little earlier. We also played a bit of the clips before this interview that my colleague Thabo Mdluli had with the host of where the nub of this issue, that these Israeli officials came into the country, but they didn't follow diplomatic channels, and they were invited by the Abatembu King Buyelekhaya Dalindyebo. Now, he spoke to Newzroom Afrika earlier, and King Buyelekhaya Dalindyebo says, look, he's well within his rights, and he doesn't actually have to follow any diplomatic protocol. He's pretty much above the premier, who's now launched a probe into this, and the president because of his royal descent.
Well, I would smiling because this is an internal South African problem to be solved, and I don't want to comment on it, but it is amusing to me because it sounds very much like the domestic politics of the United States.
Fascinating. Well, Prof, I really always appreciate getting your insights. Thank you so much for joining us this evening.